This is the Roland SP404-MKII, and we all know it's great for dusty lo-fi hip-hop, but will it house? What is up, greedy guts? It's your boy Big Umami, and today we are back with yet another installment of Will It, a series in which I pick one particular groovebox to figure out whether it's good or not for producing one particular genre of music. And with today's episode, we're also back on the Roland SP404-MKII for the very first time after that massive update that Roland released back last July. That update included many things, but the most important thing that they did was adding TR-Rec, which is basically Roland's step sequencer. That is a hugely important development for this groovebox because it makes things like drum programming so much easier, especially with genres like the one we're exploring today. And before this, the only way to actually record and arrange sounds into patterns was to record them real time onto the pads, which is great maybe for Datsun and Fred again, but not for me because I'm not a great finger drummer. You can still play in real time, but you have the ability to actually go in and edit all the mistakes that you made during your performance. Or if you're like me, you just, write things in the sequencer directly because it's much easier, honestly. And we'll see, it makes much more sense for drums than it does for like melody stuff, but more about that later. Needless to say, on paper this update makes this machine a much more versatile one, and I think it's gonna reflect in my final scores, but we'll see. So, as usual, I'll go through it making a beat to the best of my abilities, and at the end of the video I'll give out scores both to sound and usability on a scale from 1 to 10 to determine whether the SP404-MKII is a great match for house music producers. And so, I've already imported some sounds from my Big Umami bombs pack, link in the description box below. I've got some drums and percussions, basses, a pad, a piano. Also, I've recorded this amazing vocal sample that I found on Instagram.
One thing for sure, one law that was passed is clearly being practiced right now, because I smell some weed. Someone is smoking. Someone is smoking.
Okay, so let's start establishing some kind of rhythm. The BPM is already set at 130. Press record, part 1. I'm gonna select 4 bars. And let's use the new TR-Rec mode by pressing remain. And also I'm gonna have some shuffle, cause why not? I'm gonna select the kick by pressing sub plus 13. I'm gonna set the velocity to 127 in order to have maximum volume on all of these notes. And I'm putting down a basic 4 on the floor on all pages of the pattern. So this is a 4-bar pattern, so we have 4 different pages. Time for the open hi-hat, and again, very simple beat. I'm selecting all of the upbeats, which is basically a typical house groove. Now for the rest of the hi-hats. I'm gonna spice this up by setting a few of these hits to be a different pitch, like so. Cool, so now it's time for the vocal sample. I'm gonna have to really work on it and slice it up, but first I want to see whether the natural rhythm of this sample kind of matches with the groove that I already have. So let's hear it. It's definitely too quick. Let's try it at -2.
One thing for sure, one law that was passed is clearly being practiced right now, because I smell some.
That sounds about right. So now I'll have to go ahead and chop it. And this is not a tutorial about chopping samples on the SP404-MKII. Also, it is an incredibly boring activity, so I'll just skip to the finished product. Thanks to the magic of editing, I'm back with some freshly cut slices.
One thing for sure, one lord that was smoking weed.
And I'll definitely go back to the editing well for this part because I'm trying to use these slices in a musical manner. But it takes a long time in this machine. You see, there are 4 bars in this pattern and there is no way to lock in on just one of the bars. So anytime you make a change on any of them, you still have to wait out the remaining 3 bars before looping back to where you were. Anyway, I'm now happy with the result. Let's add a pad now. Let's try it out. And before recording this, actually, I want to put some effects on it and resample it. Let's cut some low frequencies first with an isolator. Then I'd like to add a cassette emulation. I'm gonna record this in real-time mode, and for sounds like this where you have lots of chromatic variation, I find a real-time mode to be much more useful when used in conjunction with quantization. And at this point I'm gonna make a copy of this pattern because we're gonna start thinking about structure and arrangement very soon, and it's good to have different copies from which to take out some instruments and mute some instruments and delete some instruments in order to build up a arrangement. And on this new copy I'm gonna layer some claps. I like this one. I'm gonna lay it out in TREC mode. And I definitely need some more percussions, so I'm gonna go dig into my SD card for sounds. I press Shift plus 14, import from SD card, sample, Big Umami Bombs Volume 1. This is a sample pack that you can find on my website, bigumami.com. It's got 192 sounds, bass, chords, claps, closed hi-hats, kicks, melody single shots, open hi-hats, pads, percussions, slice breaks, snares, and toms. You might want to know that all of the samples that you hear in this video, except for the vocal sample that I recorded off of Instagram, are included in this pack, which again, you can find at bigumami.com. It would be great if you could check it out. I'll put the link in the description box below. Okay, now that we've loaded up on sounds, let's add some in our pattern. Let's write a bass. I like this sound, it's very old school. It is also lacking some low frequencies though, so I'm gonna use isolator to pump those up and then resample it. You gotta be careful with it and take the volume down, otherwise it's gonna be a distorted mess when you resample it. Cool, let's write this in real-time mode. And finally, let's record some melody also in real-time mode. So, I did a bit of arrangement off camera, as you can see. We have an intro with clap, intro with clap and synth, first breakdown, verse plus vocal sample, breakdown number 2, So at this point, I think we firmly established that the update made things much easier for the average house producer producing on the SP404-MKII. You can build up your patterns using both real-time mode and TREC mode. You can edit them, you can chain them together and form a nice little song. But there was something missing in the live performance side of this. I couldn't really figure it out until I actually did. We don't really have any way to mute and unmute tracks. So yeah, if you're coming from a more straightforward like 16-step sort of sequencer, drum machine, you will definitely find this sorely missing in your workflow. Just think about it. What's the easiest way to transition from one pattern to another in house music? Maybe you've got a nice groove going on, but then you want to get to the next pattern where you're probably going to add some bass or some keys. So maybe you mute the kick for like a bar and then boom, back in for maximum impact. And you can't really do it all that easily in here. You would have to create a copy of the pattern and maybe delete the last 4 kicks in the pattern, and then you would have to know that you want to go to that copied version of the pattern before going to the next. I mean, it's just complicated, but don't worry, because I found a great workaround for this problem. So if you notice, you have a mute bus function right here if you press Shift plus bus effects. Let's see what it does. Well, it just mutes everything. Why? Well, because it says bus 1 plus 2 right here. So the first thing that you want to do is to go into the effects settings, which is Shift plus 16, navigate to the other tab, mute bus, you press on it and switch from all to bus. That will mute the currently selected bus rather than both of them. So the idea is that you take all samples off of bus 1 and maybe you assign them to bus 2, but for now let's just take them off bus 1 except for the kick. So the kick is going to stay on bus 1. So now when we select bus 1 and mute bus, it should mute just the kick drum and nothing else. We've got a pattern going on. Now if I select bus 1, press Shift plus bus effects. Yeah! It works! So remember that we took all of the samples basically off of bus 1, but really any bus. In fact, they're all grayed out right now, yeah? Well, you can decide them to leave them grayed out, and that means that even when you put effects on bus 2, nothing really is gonna happen. Or you can assign them to bus 2, and you do so by selecting bus 2 and pressing remaining plus the pads that you wanna assign. As an example, let's go to pattern 8, bus 2. Let's press isolator. As you can hear, the kick is not being affected at all by isolator. Let's say that you're performing this tune and you want to put an effect on all tracks, including the kick. If you go to bus 2 and add, say, a beat repeat, it's not going to affect the kick because the kick is on bus 1. So the way you fix this is by going again into EFX settings, and as you can see here, the effects are being used in parallel, which means anything on bus 1 gets affected only by effects on bus 1, and anything on bus 2 gets only affected by effects on bus 2. But if I press this button, I switch from parallel to series. So whatever is on bus 1 gets affected by all effects on bus 1 plus all effects on bus 2. Let's try it out. As you can hear, bus 1 mute is still working, but if I go to bus 2, boom, it affects everything, including the kick. If, on the other hand, you're the kind of person who likes to use reverbs and delays on their transitions, I would strongly suggest that you leave the buses in parallel. Why? Because reverbs and delays don't typically sound good on kick drums. They muddy up the sound and it's a big mess. Alright, I think we set ourselves up for a bit of a jam, so let's jam.
One thing for sure, one law that was passed is clearly being practiced right now. Cause I smell some weed. Someone is smoking. Someone is smoking.
And it's now time for my favorite section. Let's vote! Let's start with the sound. What am I gonna say about this? It's an SP404. It's got a gajillion effects. I know of people who just buy this unit just for the effects, which is a bit much, honestly, in my opinion, because it's so much more than that. It's a sampler. But anyway, you know, the effects are probably half of the reason why people even consider this machine. So the sounds are good. Resampling is always fun. I don't care, even if the sound doesn't really need it, I'll put some effects on it and resample it because it's so much fun again. That said, when it comes to actually stacking lots of tracks together, lots of sounds, the summing is actually not that good. And that might be a problem for house music because, you know, depending on the subgenre of house music, there is a world in which you have, say, like 20 tracks in a song. Yeah, things get quite muddy really quick, especially when, you know, basses come in, which is kind of a shame. But and the 16 pads plus, you know, 3 knobs layout doesn't really help with mixing, but more about that later. Overall sound is a solid 8 because, I mean, it doesn't sound clean, but it sounds great. And maybe it's the lo-fi house side of me talking, but yeah, I like the way it sounds. I mean, if I wanted something ultra clean, I'd just use a computer. So there you have it. So, usability. Let's talk about the bad first and the good later. As I said, the layout of this machine wasn't conceived for, you know, mixing, adjusting levels and all of that. So with something like lo-fi hip-hop, no problem. You got like 3 tracks. You got a sample, you got some drums, and you got a bass. And, you know, if you want to adjust some levels, the menu diving is not too bad. You know, you have to do it 3 times or 4 or 5 or 6 or even 8. But with something like house music, again, you have a lot of sounds. You have a lot of nice bells and whistles and, you know, percussions and all of that. And yeah, mixing, you know, volumes and EQs and stuff, it's just very, very, very long and farraginous process. There's a lot of menu diving and that's not good for usability. That's it. And again, the layout was basically what was preventing this machine from having track mutes in the first place. And that's why you come to Uncle Mummy for that sweet SP404-MKII knowledge you so clearly crave. Because with that simple trick that I show you, plus the amazing work that Roland actually put into the update, at least now it's much easier for house producers to produce house music on this machine. So all in all, I'll give usability, should I give it a 6? Yeah, let's give it a 6. And that brings the overall vote to 7. So, have you tried to use this machine for producing house music? If yes, what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Here's some more Willits videos for you. Please remember to like and subscribe. Please remember that you can support me at buymeacoffee.com/bigumami. Also, remember that I have that bigumami.com website where you can find some sweet sample packs. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. And yeah, blah 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 blah, whatever. I'll see you next week. Mwah.